Haddish has a big ass mouth. You can't bring ratchet ass bitches like her nowhere.
Elizabeth Banks is a whore.
That bitch just looks loud.
Viola Davis's boobs look like a book.
Jennifer Lawrence is really unenthusiastic.
Well, you know what? Why don't you shut up with your 14 followers?
Under a virtual identity, it is easy for people to say things that aren't socially acceptable said face-to-face or even at all. I mean, how many times are you likely to call a stranger on the street a fucking bitch? Most likely, not at all. However, with the advent of social media and a new platform of communication, harassment has taken a completely different form. In the late 1990s, a North Hollywood man was prosecuted for trying to set up a rave for a woman who denied his romantic advances by posting advertisements in the name of the woman soliciting rape and gangbang fantasies. Then, the US Assistant Attorney Michael J. Jenico has stated, "This technology has created a whole new class of criminals who would not otherwise have the forbearance to terrorize people face to face." For each individual users, they experience social media differently, especially depending on the algorithm. But for women, it's a bit like this: unsolicited comments, pictures best kept in the folds of their underwears, death threats because you rejected a courting offer. 70% of adult American women say that online harassment is a big deal. That's almost 20% more than what adult American males think, while at the same time, 64% of men think that offensive content is taken too seriously. I think I'd take it seriously if someone sent me a dick pic that I didn't want to see. In traditional media, women, minority genders, and race, whether it be the LGBTQIA+ community or other people of color groups, have more or less been silenced or treated unfairly. Twitter is one of the most well-known social media platforms of today, but it's also as equally infamously known for the toxicity that exists on the platform, whether it be threats, abuse, and harassment hurled left and right, especially towards female public figures, whether they be politicians, celebrities, writers, or just any woman, and often with little accountability. Jessica Valenti, an American journalist and writer, said to Amnesty, "I think Twitter is the worst social media platforms, just because of the quick and mass flow of abuse that happens. The content feels pretty similar across the platforms, but the sheer volume of it on Twitter is what's different. When I started talking about abortion, the abuse on Twitter went to a deeper level. When I talked about BLM, it went to a deeper level. That's the deep issue of how much white supremacy and misogyny is really embedded in our culture. And people are upset when marginalized folks, black folks, women of color, trans women, trans folk, when they reclaim their narratives and are unapologetic. It makes people uncomfortable. And this primal level of attack comes out, and they say such disgusting things."
You know, I go and I talk at colleges a lot, and almost at every talk that I give, a young woman will come up and say the same thing to me. I wanted to be a writer, I wanted to be a journalist, I wanted to be a feminist in some sort of public way, and then I saw the harassment that you get, and I don't want to do it anymore. And it's horrible, not just for them, but it's horrible for us, because when we just have the same kind of people writing and speaking about these issues, people who maybe don't get harassed as much, maybe it's more men, maybe it's more white men and straight people, we're losing out on a fuller picture of what the world looks like.
Many times, the advice given to internet users when experiencing some form of online harassment is to block and report, or deactivate your account. However, as pointed out by the Harvard Business Review, these tools are imperfect. Blocking can escalate abuse, muting can mask threats that you may need to monitor, and reporting mechanisms are imperfect, even when abusive content blatantly violates terms of service. It is also likely that the harassment that you are receiving might be ambiguous. You might find yourself asking, "I feel uncomfortable, but is this really harassment? Is it a big enough issue to report?" At the end of the day, people just want to be able to comfortably and safely use their social media. They no longer want to be silenced. The use of social media not only encompasses a public sphere, but also a private sphere, and this harassment very much bleeds into our private lives. If you remember from a few years ago, Jennifer Lawrence had her nudes leaked in such an oh-so-scandalous scandal, but not many of us might have known what she said about it after. It is not a scandal, it is a sex crime. It is a sexual violation. It's disgusting. Anybody who looked at those pictures, you're perpetuating a sexual offense. You should cower with shame. Even people who I know and love say, "Oh yeah, I looked at the pictures." I don't want to get mad, but at the same time I'm thinking, I didn't tell you that you could look at my naked body. Never before has it been so damn easy in creating, sharing, or indulging in inappropriate messages or content. Sure, these things have been happening way before the invention of social media, of course, but social media has exacerbated the issue. Have you perhaps heard of the Warwick History Major rape group chat? Or maybe a more recent case of an Indian WhatsApp group called the Boys Locker Room? Perhaps these cases were too specific. Ask yourself this: have you or someone you know received unsolicited nude pictures? If the answer is yes, it's more common than you think. And for some, it escalates into more serious forms of abuse, including but not limited to cyberstalking and revenge porn. Just blocking or deactivating isn't enough, and by doing so, you're still not eliminating the threat. Furthermore, ask yourself if you or someone you know is in some sort of group that shares pornographic images. Are you a part of the problem? On the other hand, sometimes these forms of harassments may not be so overt, easily disguising themselves in things that you may see every day but still perpetuating harmful stereotypes, especially to younger, more impressionable audiences. This is usually in the form of memes. Memes are the language of the internet, a common culture that all internet users share with minor variations depending on location. Memes easily transcend borders and even language, especially for internet users who are fluent in more than one language. Have you seen these memes or others like them? As a savvy internet user, perhaps you have heard of the term SJWs, aka social justice warriors, and maybe you know how a lot of websites, especially some subreddits and 4chan, take issue with declaring yourself a feminist. Maybe you find it offensive, or that it perpetuates harmful stereotypes that particularly targets a certain group of people and usually incorrectly. You wouldn't be wrong. In a research published by Asaf Nissenbaum and Limor Schiffman called Meme Templates as Expressive Repertoires in a Globalizing World, a cross-linguistic study, it is noted that the creators of memes are mostly middle-class Caucasian young men, and that non-dominant groups, such as women and ethnic of sexual minorities, are commonly underrepresented, marginalized, or presented through narrow stereotypes in popular culture. These hegemonic patterns of representation persist throughout various media, cultures, and eras. Dominant groups still keep their positions in the mainstream of digital culture. It is also interesting to note that memes in the English language focus on the condemnation of social groups where the emotion of anger is mostly directed at broad social or political issues and groups, and to quote, with familiar criticism of oversensitivity and or political correctness ascribed to people. Ring a bell? Tropes like these can very easily discourage someone from actively participating in social issues and trivializes the problems of many minority groups as it is swallowed up in offensive humor. On the contrary, social media is simultaneously a platform that also amplifies the voice of those that are regularly marginalized by traditional media. Social media has allowed many individuals to connect and learn more about the idea of feminism while also connecting with other self-identifying feminists, thereby creating their own safe platform in order to interact and discuss topics. Social media levels the playing field. You don't have to be 25 plus with a master's degree to speak up and for somebody to listen to you. Despite its controversies, look at how the hashtag #MeToo movement has mobilized people. And these movements aren't just limited to gender or sexual harassment either. It's impossible to look at social media activism and mobilization without looking at Black Lives Matter, one of the biggest contemporary civil movements. And these are just the movements that we see exist very publicly. But what about the smaller private networks of young empowered teenagers who seek to educate each other and themselves? As young kids grow up, sure, they're exposed to various racist and sexist content on the internet. But there also exists another side in which they can discover to form their own opinions on. With the internet and social media, the world is in your hands. And obviously, without social media, we wouldn't have been able to connect with you. So, don't forget to hit that like button, comment what you think, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram for more content coming your way. See you next video!